Good evening, time travelers. Close your eyes for a moment and let the years peel away until the calendar stops at March 12th, 1888, 11:47 p.m. You're standing on the corner of Broadway and 14th Street, Manhattan. The air is raw with coal smoke, wet wool, and the warm, earthy breath of horses still lingering on the stones. Gas lamps hiss in their glass cages, throwing trembling pools of amber onto the wet pavement. A lone hansom cab clips past, its driver hunched forward, the horse's hooves striking sparks that die almost before they're born. It was a strangely mild Sunday. People walked without great coats, crocuses poked up in window boxes, spring whispered its usual lies. Now the temperature is falling so fast you can feel it on your skin like a slap. Look up. The sky has gone the color of tarnished pewter, low and heavy, pressing down on the rooftops as though the clouds have decided to sit on the city and listen to its heartbeat. Something enormous is gathering up there, something that has traveled all the way from the Arctic without once stopping to knock.
Before we step off the curb and disappear into the white dark together, do me a favor. Smash that like button if the hairs on your neck are already standing up, and subscribe so you never miss a night when the weather itself rewrites history. Drop a comment below. Where on this spinning planet are you watching from right now? And what does your clock say? I read every single one. And on a night like this, knowing you're out there keeping me company through the storm means more than you know. Now pull your collar up. The wind is about to change its mind. And when it does, it won't ask permission either. Now, let your eyes rest completely. Feel how pleasantly heavy they have become, as though the day itself has placed two gentle hands upon them and asked them to close. Let your shoulders melt downward, loosening every knot that has gathered between your neck and your spine. Soften your jaw, unclench your teeth, and invite your breath to lengthen. Cool air sliding in through your nose, warm air gliding out, carrying with it the small burdens of the hours you have just lived.
Nothing is required of you in this moment. No task, no place, no expectation. You are held, you are safe, and you are about to step softly backward through the years, carried on a slow current of stillness until the bright electric present fades behind you and another century opens its arms. We are traveling to the evening of Sunday, March 11, 1888, in the immense, restless city of New York. This is not yet the vertical city of skyscrapers and blazing white light. This New York rises only 5 or 6 modest stories in most places, built of warm red brick and somber brownstone, its rooftops jagged against the sky like the teeth of some sleeping beast. Streetcars on iron tracks still share the avenues with private carriages and delivery wagons. The pulse of the city is measured in the huff of steam locomotives at the Hudson River terminals, in the steady clop of hooves on cobblestone, in the distant whistle of ferries crossing to New Jersey or Brooklyn. The day has been unusually tender for early spring. After a long winter that seemed unwilling to release its grip, the temperature climbed into the low 60s, an almost scandalous warmth that persuaded New Yorkers to leave their heavy wool overcoats at home. Men strolled in sack suits and straw boaters already, women in lighter dresses and smaller bustles. Along the newly laid out paths of Central Park, the crocuses had dared to show their violet and gold faces, and the tips of horse-chestnut branches glistened with the sticky green of buds about to burst. The air carried that unmistakable smell of thawed earth and faint coal smoke
softened by mist, a scent that makes even the most cynical city dweller believe, for an afternoon, that renewal is possible. But now the sun is sinking behind the Palisades across the river, painting the Hudson a deep, bruised plum. The wind shifts. It comes from the southeast, off the Atlantic, heavy with moisture. A few fat drops strike the pavement at first, testing, apologetic. Then the sky opens.
This is no harsh wintry downpour. It is a steady, generous March rain, cool but not yet cold, falling straight and true, as though the clouds have decided to rinse the entire island clean. Listen, the soft percussion on tens of thousands of slate roofs, the low rushing sound in the gutters, the metallic ping where drops strike iron fire escapes. On Broadway, the rain hisses against still warm paving stones laid only a decade earlier. Water sluices along the curbs, carrying away the day's dust, horse droppings, bits of straw, and the fine black soot that has drifted down from a million chimneys. Because it is Sunday evening, the city quiets earlier than usual. The great factories along the waterfront, sugar refineries, ironworks, printing houses, stand silent, their tall stacks no longer belching smoke. Most shops pulled down their iron shutters at noon, and only a few saloons and oyster cellars still spill yellow light onto the wet sidewalks. The last omnibuses, their varnished roofs gleaming, splash toward the stables on the side streets, the horses' hooves muffled now by the deepening puddles.
Stand with me for a moment on a corner somewhere in the 20s, perhaps near Fifth Avenue, where the residences are grander and the sidewalks are flagged with stone. Night has come quickly under the low sky. There are still almost no electric lights in the city. Edison's Pearl Street station serves only a few blocks downtown, and brush arc lamps are rare experiments that hiss and sputter like angry dragons. What light there is comes from gas. The lamplighters have made their rounds at dusk, climbing their little ladders with long poles to ignite each mantle. Now hundreds of gas flames burn quietly inside frosted glass globes atop ornate cast-iron posts. In the rain, the flames tremble and sway, throwing off a golden, almost honey-colored glow that pools on the wet pavement and fractures into 1,000 trembling reflections. Step just beyond the circle of one lamp, and the darkness folds around you like velvet. The world feels smaller, more intimate. Secrets seem possible here. The rain beads on the black iron, drips from the curved arms of the lamps, and makes soft halos in the mist.
The downpour thickens. It becomes a curtain, a steady, susurrant hush that smooths away the sharp edges of the city. Soot-darkened brick turns a richer, warmer red as the rain washes months of grime toward the sewers. Window panes stream like waterfalls. From inside the brownstones comes the faint glow of parlor lamps and the occasional silhouette of a family gathered around a piano or a fireside. Out here, the streets are nearly deserted now. Just the occasional cab with its lantern swaying, or a lone policeman in his rubber cape and helmet, twirling his nightstick as he makes his slow circuit. Breathe in the smell of wet stone, of coal smoke dissolving, of distant wood fires being stoked against the coming chill. Let the sound of the rain on awnings and rooftops become a lullaby older than any city. Feel how the whole island seems to exhale, surrendering to the night and to the cleansing water that falls without judgment on mansion and tenement alike.
This is the night the city chose to wash itself clean, unaware that within a few months, in the heat of late summer, a very different kind of darkness will arrive. But tonight, under this soft, relentless rain, New York is simply, beautifully itself, quiet, lamplit, and listening. Step with me now through the warm, glowing window of a brownstone on a quiet street in Brooklyn Heights. The rain taps politely against the panes, but inside, the world feels sealed away from every storm that ever was. A coal fire lives in the black iron grate, its heart a shifting constellation of molten orange and scarlet. Every few moments, a lump settles with a hushed crunch, sending up a brief fountain of sparks that die before they reach the chimney. The heat rolls outward in slow, deliberate waves, meeting and pushing back the cold that has begun to claw at the glass. On the mantel, a tall clock ticks with the calm authority of something that has measured 1,000 Sunday evenings and expects to measure 1,000 more. In the pool of light cast by a single oil lamp with a green glass shade sits the father of the house. His newspaper, today's New York Herald, spreads wide across his knees like a map of the larger world he will never need to enter tonight. The headlines speak of Bismarck's maneuvers in Europe, of a promising new elevated railway planned for 3rd Avenue, of the price of Pennsylvania coal. He turns a page. The paper gives its dry, familiar whisper. He has no way of knowing that the most traumatic headlines of his lifetime are at this very moment gathering force hundreds of miles to the northwest. Across the room, his wife rocks almost imperceptibly in a deep green velvet chair. Her knitting needles, fine steel glinting in the firelight, move with the steady certainty of a loom. Click, 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 click. A half-finished scarf of soft Shetland wool grows row by row in her lap, destined for their eldest boy away at college. The rhythm is older than speech. It is the sound of evenings made safe. Curled on the Brussels carpet in front of the fender lies the household cat, a plump tabby whose sides rise and fall in perfect, unhurried breaths. One paw is tucked neatly beneath its chest. The tip of its tail twitches now and then as it chases imagined mice through whatever dreams cats dream. The air itself is a rich, layered thing, beeswax from the candles on the piano, the faint sweetness of dried rose petals in a bowl on the whatnot shelf, the honest bite of coal smoke that has seeped through every carpet and curtain over the winter, and, drifting above it all, the gentle vanilla ghost of the father's pipe tobacco. This room is a small country of warmth and familiar smells, its borders guarded by thick walls and heavier curtains. But outside, the weather is changing its mind. It begins as the smallest betrayal. The soft southern breeze that had cradled the day simply stops. For several heartbeats, the city holds its breath. Wind vanes on rooftops hesitate, spin once, then freeze. In that suspended moment, you can almost hear the planet turning.
Then the new wind arrives. It pours down the Hudson Valley like meltwater from some vast and invisible glacier. It has crossed Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, gathering speed and cold and moisture in equal measure. It shoulders aside the mild air as easily as a steamship scatters smaller boats. Chimney smoke that had been drifting lazily southward is suddenly snatched northward, flattened, torn to rags. Thermometers on drugstore windows begin their quiet, merciless retreat. 50 degrees becomes 45 in the space of half an hour, then 30, then 38. People stepping out for a last breath of air before bed pull the door shut behind them with startled exclamations. The rain, which had fallen in straight, forgiving lines, now arrives sideways, driven by gusts that rattle the sash windows. Each drop is suddenly edged with ice. They strike the glass with a harder, more metallic note. On the sidewalks, puddles that had been liquid mirrors moments ago develop delicate lacework along their edges, thin sheets of ice racing inward like frost flowers blooming in seconds.
The gas lamps feel the change most dramatically.
Their flames, so steady earlier, now leap and flatten inside their glass cages, throwing wild, distorted shadows that gallop along the wet brick walls. The iron posts themselves begin to sing, a low, almost subaudible hum as the cold contracts the metal and the wind plucks at it like a string. Leave the warm parlor now and travel with the wind as it sweeps across the river to the sprawling rail yards along the Jersey Shore and the Harlem tracks. Here the great locomotives rest like iron dragons after a day's hunting. Their boilers tick as they cool, releasing occasional sighs of steam that the wind instantly shreds and hurls away. Water beads on the massive driving wheels, then freezes in glittering collars. Switchmen and brakemen, hardened men who think they have seen every kind of March weather, pause beneath the eaves of the roundhouse. They turn up the collars of their wool coats and stamp their feet, watching their breath bloom white in the lantern light.
Feels like the bottom dropped clean out, one mutters, swinging his railroad lantern so the beam sweeps across the rails, now glazed with a paper-thin skin of ice. His companion, older, with a beard flecked with frost already, spits thoughtfully into the darkness. Wind's got teeth tonight. Mark me, we'll wake to a different world. They laugh, because that is what men do when the weather turns serious, but the laughter is thin. Their lanterns sway as they walk, tick-tock, tick-tock, casting golden arcs that shrink and vanish behind them as they hurry toward the stove in the yard office. They have no idea. None of them do. High above, unseen, the storm is only just beginning to gather its true strength. Far above the sleeping rooftops, where no eye can follow, a mighty and silent war is being waged in the heavens. A vast river of bitter Arctic air, borne over the frozen tundra of Canada and sharpened by its long journey across the icy Great Lakes, has slammed headlong into the warm, water-heavy breath of the Gulf Stream. The collision is invisible, yet colossal, a swirling cauldron of energy hundreds of miles wide. Pressure drops, temperatures plummet, and the moisture that only hours ago fell as gentle rain now surrenders to the cold. High in the clouds, each tiny droplet flashes into crystal. Water molecules rearrange themselves into perfect hexagonal lattices, branching into intricate feathery arms no two alike. Billions upon billions of these microscopic ice sculptures form in minutes, delicate, lace-like stars that catch and scatter the faint moonlight like drifting diamonds. Down below, the city hears the change before it sees it. The steady drumming of rain on roofs and awnings grows muffled, as though someone has laid a thick quilt over the world. The sharp slap of drops against stone softens into a dry, papery rustle. A hush spreads, street by street. And then, almost shyly at first, the first true snowflakes drift into the circles of gaslight. They are large and soggy in the beginning, wet clumps that kiss the pavement and vanish with a hiss, mingling with the last of the rain to form a thin, gray slush that coats boots and carriage wheels. Children who should be asleep press their noses to bedroom windows and watch in drowsy wonder. But the cold deepens relentlessly, the cobblestones still holding the day's mildness, cool degree by degree. Soon the snowflakes land and stay. They cling, they begin to build. Stand beneath any one of the thousands of gas lamps that guard the avenues, tilt your face upward, and you will see a miracle. Out of the black void above, an endless parade of white specks tumbles into the amber cone of light. They spiral, they twirl, they dart like tiny moths drawn to the flame. then glides silently past your cheek to join the whitening ground. Each flake is a fleeting work of art, gone the moment it touches warmth, yet together they are remaking the entire city. The clock on Trinity Church strikes 12, its bronze voice muffled by the thickening air. New York sleeps. In countless parlors, the fires have settled into dull red embers that pulse like slow heartbeats. Families breathe deeply under patchwork quilts.
Only the occasional night watchman or baker stoking his ovens stirs within the walls. The great metropolis has drawn its blankets up to its chin. Yet outside, the storm is awakening in earnest. The wind, now fully committed to its northern mission, rises into a steady, mournful howl. It sweeps down the narrow canyons of the streets, funneling between the buildings with a voice that climbs and falls like a distant train. Overhead, the telegraph wires, those thin black threads that bind the nation together, begin to sing. They vibrate in the gale, producing an eerie metallic hum that rises into a thin, high whine, as though the city itself is whispering warnings to anyone still awake to listen. Snow no longer melts, it conquers. It clings to every rough surface, the soot-darkened brick of tenements, the carved brownstone cornices of mansions, the iron scrollwork of balconies. It piles in soft, rounded mounds on windowsills and doorstep railings. It crowns the fire hydrants like fresh sugar loaves, and dusts the backs of sleeping horses tied outside stables. Inch by inch, the familiar city is being draped in a clean, luminous shroud. The night's palette transforms. The wet, mirror-black streets turn to a velvet white that glows faintly even in darkness. Gaslight, once sharp and golden, now diffuses through the swirling flakes into a dreamy, peach-colored haze that reaches farther than before, softening every edge. Shadows lose their hard knives and become gentle washes of lavender and steel blue, as though the world has been sketched in watercolor instead of ink. Down at the harbor, where the Hudson meets the upper bay, the water has grown restless. Whitecaps slap against barnacled pilings. The forest of masts in the South Street seaport rocks in uneasy rhythm, rigging creaking like old floorboards. Snow settles on furled sails, turning them into ghostly white hills. It dusts the decks of schooners and packet ships, muffles the slap of waves, and silences the usual chorus of gulls, who have long since tucked their heads beneath wings in the shelter of warehouses and pier sheds. On a lonely beat in Lower Manhattan, near Bowling Green, a policeman trudges his rounds. His tall helmet is already sugared white, and melting flakes glint on his thick mustache.
The brass buttons of his double-breasted greatcoat gleamed dully beneath a heavy wool cape. His boots make a soft, crunching sound as he moves from one pool of light to the next. Every few minutes, he pauses beneath the slight overhang of a shop awning, knocks snow from his shoulders, and watches the storm intensify. The flakes are smaller now, drier, driven almost horizontally by gusts that whip around corners. They sting exposed skin like fine grains of salt. He pulls his collar higher and tugs his cap lower, squinting into the swirling whiteness. The streets feel impossibly vast and empty. On a normal night, there would be the flicker of a match as a newsboy lit a cigarette, the distant laugh from a saloon doorway, the rattle of a late cab. Tonight, there is only the wind's low moan, the muffled creak of a swinging sign, and the endless silent descent of snow. He stamps his feet to keep the blood moving and glances up at the sky he cannot see. Well now,
he mutters to himself, voice swallowed instantly by the storm. This is turning into a proper howler. He has seen snow before, plenty of it. But something about this night feels different. The cold bites deeper. The flakes pile faster. The city, for all its noise and ambition, has been hushed as completely as a cathedral. He tightens his grip on his nightstick and moves on, lantern swaying, leaving a solitary trail of footprints that the storm is already smoothing away. Behind him, ahead of him, all around him, the great blizzard of 1888 is gathering its full strength, preparing to bury New York beneath a white silence deeper than any living soul can yet imagine. The policeman shoulders back into the storm. Each bootfall punches a dark hole into the new snow. But before he has taken 6 more steps, the wind has already swept a lace curtain across the prints. And 6 steps later, even the memory of them is gone. The city is learning how quickly it can be erased. Come with me now, northward, beyond the last row of gas lamps, beyond even the scattered oil lamps of the suburban villages. Leave the brick and brownstone behind and rise over the Harlem River until the great grid of streets dissolves into black fields and pale frozen marshes. Here there is no light but the snow itself. The farmhouses stand miles apart, low and stubborn against the horizon. Their windows are shuttered tight. Only a faint red seam glows beneath a door where the kitchen stove is banked for the night. Inside the barns, the animals press close, cows breathing clouds of steam that rise and vanish into the rafters, horses stamping uneasily, sheep packed shoulder to shoulder like woolen boulders. They feel the pressure dropping in their bones long before human beings stir. Outdoors, the wind is given absolute freedom. Nothing slows it, nothing deflects it. It races across the open ground at 40, 50 miles an hour, scooping yesterday's light snowfall from the stubble fields and hurling it forward in rolling, hissing clouds. Snow piles in hard, glassy ridges against stone walls, climbs the northern sides of barns until it nearly touches the eaves, sculpts fantastic overhanging lips that gleam like frozen waves caught mid-crash. The great oaks and maples that line the old post road stand stripped and skeletal, every twig outlined in a thick sleeve of white, so that the entire tree looks dipped in porcelain. When the gusts hit, the branches clatter together with a sound like distant bones. Here the silence is not merely quiet, it is massive. Snow drinks sound the way sponges drink water. A dog barks half a mile away, and the bark arrives muffled, as if spoken through a scarf. An owl's hunting cry is smothered before it travels 50 yards. The world feels wrapped in countless layers of thickest wool. Back over the city, a single bronze bell in a church tower manages to strike one. The note is frail, rounded at the edges, snatched apart by the gale almost before it is born. The storm has decided to stay. Wind that only an hour ago was merely brisk now screams down the avenues in long, unbroken howls. It rattles window panes in their frames, finds every loose shutter and flings it back against the brick with a sound like gunshots. Store signs, painted tin rectangles announcing boots and shoes, fine cigars, fresh oysters, swing wildly on rusting chains, shrieking on their hinges in frantic minor keys. Inside the Brooklyn brownstone, the father stirs, pulled from sleep by a knife of cold air that has slipped through some invisible seam. The fire is nothing but a faint red eye beneath gray ash. He reaches instinctively for the quilt, draws it to his chin, and listens. The wind no longer sounds like weather. It sounds personal, furious,
as though the night itself has taken offense. He thinks of rising to bank the fire or check the latches, but the mattress is a warm continent, and sleep drags him back under with velvet fingers. Just a blow, he tells himself. It'll ease by dawn. It will not ease for 72 hours. On the streets, the snow falls so thickly that distance collapses. 20 feet away, the opposite sidewalk is a rumor. Gas lamps become lonely golden planets suspended in a churning white nebula. Step outside and the world shrinks to the radius of your own eyelashes, thick with clinging flakes. Open your mouth to breathe, and snow rushes in, cold and dry as flour. Blink, and your lashes are suddenly heavy with frost. Overhead, the telegraph wires, those proud copper threads that only last year carried the news of Cleveland's election in minutes, are surrendering, one by one. Ice sleeves an inch thick coat each wire. The weight drags them down until they sway like skipping ropes. Somewhere up near Yonkers, a pole gives way with a crack like a cannon shot. The wire whips free, lashes the air, and falls silent. Seconds later, another snaps near Harlem. Then two at once on the Brooklyn side. Each break is a small, invisible amputation. Messages that began as urgent pulses, blizzard warning, coast from Chesapeake to Maine, die mid-sentence. New York is having its voice gently, systematically cut. In the narrow courts of the Lower East Side and Five Points, where tenements lean together like gossiping old women, the snow finds every crevice. It packs the alleys until they become slot canyons of white. It rises against doorways until only the transom windows remain clear. Inside, entire families sleep curled like spoons beneath patched quilts. 3 generations sharing 2 rooms and 1 stove. Their breath freezes in delicate ferns across the inside of the glass. By morning, the patterns will be thick enough to scrape with a fingernail. Children dream of green meadows they have never seen, while the temperature outside plunges toward 0. Look down now from some impossible height and see the strange, cold beauty the storm is creating. White is no longer merely a color, it is an active force. It glows, actually glows with a faint phosphorescent pallor, drinking in whatever stray photons escape the cloud cover, and giving them back as a spectral blue-white shimmer. Piles of kitchen slop and broken crates in the gutters vanish beneath perfect domes. Jagged iron fences are transformed into rippling curtains of lace. Central Park's rambling paths become smooth, unbroken ribbons. Every ugly, scarred, soot-stained surface is granted absolution under a thick, flawless mantle. For a few uncanny hours, the city looks exactly as its dreamers wish it to be: pure, silent, monumental. The mercury keeps falling. 20 degrees, 18, 15. The cold becomes predatory. It slides under door sills on its belly, creeps along floorboards, turns the water in bedside pitchers into cloudy domes of ice that clink softly when the maid lifts them in the morning. Metal contracts with faint metallic sighs. Window panes pop in their frames. In the harbor, the surface of the Hudson begins to glaze over with a skin of ice that thickens even as the tide tries to tear it apart. And still the snow falls, finer now, drier, harder, driven almost level by a wind that has climbed past 60 miles an hour. The white hurricane, as tomorrow's newspapers will name it when newspapers can be printed again, has settled in for the duration.
It intends to bury the metropolis the way ancient blizzards once buried whole armies on the Russian steppes. By the small hours of this Monday morning in March 1888, New York has already begun to disappear beneath a sculpture of itself. Clean, blinding, and utterly merciless.
Deep beneath the grand hotels that line Fifth Avenue like marble palaces, the Fifth Avenue Hotel, the Hoffman House, the newly opened Hotel Saint Denis, the night furnace men work shirt-sleeved despite the hour. Their shovels ring against iron as they feed gleaming heaps of anthracite into the glowing bellies of the boilers. Each scoop sends up a brief hellish flare that paints their faces demonic orange. Far above, the great chimneys are roaring like dragons. The wind fights its way down the flues, making the flames bellow and retreat in uneasy rhythm. The men glance at one another without speaking. They have worked through nor'easters before, but never one that sounds quite so hungry. They are thankful for the thick stone foundations, for the rivers of steam rising through the radiators, for the miles of carpet and velvet that separate them from what is happening topside. On the upper floors, behind heavy brocade drapes, the wealthy sleep the sleep of the untouchable. Silk sheets and eiderdown swallow them whole. The storm is only a faint, rhythmic throb against the window panes, something between a distant sea and a lullaby.
It makes the crystal chandeliers tremble almost imperceptibly, sends soft shadows dancing across gilded ceilings, and deepens the delicious sense that money can, indeed, buy a private climate. But the small birds of the city are not so fortunate. Sparrows and pigeons, those scrappy citizens who normally strut the cornices like they own them, now huddle in desperate clusters beneath slate overhangs and terracotta gargoyles. They press breast to breast, puffing their feathers into downy spheres, tucking beak and feet away from the wind that finds every crack. Snow needles into their shelter, coating tail feathers, sealing eyelids. Every few minutes one shivers violently, shifts position, tries to burrow deeper into the living blanket of bodies. Dawn, when it finally drags itself over the horizon, will offer no mercy, only colder light and deeper drifts. The wind has made up its mind once and for all. It swings northwest and locks in, fierce and steady as a train. Snow no longer falls. It is fired sideways like volleys of fine shot. North-facing walls disappear beneath smooth, hard slabs that build outward in frozen waves.
South-facing facades remain almost naked, raw brick staring in disbelief at their white-plastered twins. The city has become a study in opposites, half bride, half mourner. Listen, and you can hear the wind playing the streets like organ pipes. It shrieks thin and piercing through the narrow slits of alleyways, drops to a deep, mournful moan as it rounds the great bulk of a church, then explodes into a full-throated roar across Madison Square. Every cornice, every balcony, every forgotten clothesline adds its own note to the vast, wild chord. By 3 o'clock, the ruler would show 12 inches in the open, twice that where the wind has sculpted drifts. Carriage wheels are useless. Iron tires skid and spin. The horse-drawn streetcars sit abandoned on their buried tracks, their overhead wires sagging under glittering sleeves of ice. Switches are frozen solid. Even the third rail experiments downtown will be helpless. The arteries of a city that prides itself on never sleeping have been delicately, deliberately severed by something as gentle as a feather repeated 1 trillion times.
Yet there is an enforced holiness in the stopping. The relentless machinery of ambition, the clatter of printing presses, the ringing of stock tickers, the ceaseless clamor of buy, sell, build, arrive, has been ordered to stand still by a force older and greater. For one rare night, the clock is broken, and no one can wind it.
Rise now higher than the tallest steeple, and look down. The proud grid that men drew so confidently across Manhattan is being rubbed out like chalk from a slate. Streets, sidewalks, curbs, all the proud distinctions of civilization vanish beneath a single, unbroken field of white. Central Park has become an immense blank page. Rooftops are neat white tablets waiting for an unread message. From this height, the city looks soft enough to touch, organic, almost breathing, one vast creature curled beneath a quilt, dreaming uneasy dreams. Far below, a single milk wagon makes its stubborn attempt. The driver, swathed in blankets and scarves until only his eyes show, urges his old gray mare forward. The horse snorts great dragon plumes of steam, leans into the collar, but the wagon's wheels sink to the hubs. Snowballs in the horse's fetlocks until each step is a painful effort. The driver talks to her the way a father talks to a frightened child. Low, steady, loving. After 50 yards, he gives up. He turns the mare with gentle tugs on the reins, and together they retreat, the empty milk cans rattling like bones. There will be no milk, no coffee, no fresh rolls this morning. Routine, one of the gods of the modern age, has been quietly murdered by the storm. The snowfall intensifies again, as though the clouds have opened a second reservoir. Flakes no longer drift, they knit themselves together in mid-air, forming a dense, shifting curtain that erases even the nearest lampposts in the space of a heartbeat. Sound is smothered so completely that your own pulse becomes the loudest thing in the world. This is the heart of the great white hurricane. The moment when the storm stops pretending to be weather and reveals itself as an event, something the city will measure time by for decades. Before the blizzard, after the blizzard.
And you, wherever you are right now, are warm. You are wrapped in the softest dark, beneath layers that hold your own heat close. The wind may rattle the panes, but it cannot reach you. Every gust, every muffled thud of snow against the roof only reminds you how perfectly safe you are, how deliciously removed from the cold world outside. Let the storm rage. Let it bury the streets, silence the telegraphs, stop the clocks. Here, in this small circle of warmth and breath and quiet, nothing is asked of you except to sink deeper into rest. The city will wake eventually, shocked, transformed, half-broken, wholly awed. But for now, the blizzard cradles it the way a fierce mother cradles a restless child, tightly, completely, and without the slightest intention of letting go before morning. Let the wind be the only voice now. It is no longer a howl. It has become a single, unbroken note, low, continuous, almost subterranean, the sound of an entire ocean of air pouring across the continent and breaking against the island of Manhattan.
Feel it in your chest, the way sailors once felt distant surf through the planks of a ship. Let that deep, steady rush carry every remaining scrap of tension out through the soles of your feet. Let it rock you the way a cradle rocks a child, slow and inevitable, until your thoughts loosen and drift like the snow itself. Outside, the flakes no longer fall. They migrate. They move in vast, silent herds, millions upon millions, each one a perfect six-armed miracle, no bigger than a pinhead. Yet together, they are rewriting the city inch by inch. Time is measured only in depth now. 14 inches, 16, 18. The rulers and yardsticks people will brandish tomorrow already lie buried and useless. We are in the truest depth of the night.
that hollow country between 3 and 4 o'clock when the soul is heaviest and the veil between worlds thinnest. Even the most restless sleeper has surrendered now. Dreams run deep and strange. Children chase phantom butterflies across July meadows, while outside their windows, winter is building mountains.
Come close to a third-floor window in a tall brick house on West 23rd Street. The glass is no longer a window. It has become a frozen tapestry. Breath and warmth from within have collided with the savage cold and blossomed into a forest of frost. Lean in, not with your body, but with your attention, and study the handiwork. Long, silver-green fern fronds unfurl in slow motion across the pane, delicate as breath itself. Feathers of ice overlap one another in soft, overlapping arcs. Hexagonal stars bloom and branch into one another until the entire surface is a dense, glittering curtain. Through it, the world outside is only a suggestion. Gray shapes dissolving into white, white dissolving into gray. If you were foolish enough to lay a hand on that glass, the cold would feel like a burn, a bright, shocking pain that would make you snatch your fingers away. But you are not foolish. You are deep inside the room, held in a pocket of still air that smells faintly of wool and lamp oil and the ghost of yesterday's coal fire. The radiator has long since stopped ticking. The metal has shrunk in the cold until it is silent. Shadows stretch long and gentle across the carpet, and the only movement is the almost imperceptible sway of the curtains as pressure shifts somewhere far above. Down on the street, the gas lamps are losing their courage. Snow has plastered one side of every glass mantle until the flame inside burns lopsided, spilling light in only one direction like a candle cupped against the wind. The glow that reaches the ground is bruised and uncertain, a dim violet-amber haze that catches the nearest flakes and turns them momentarily into tiny sparks before they vanish into the dark. Beyond the small circle of each lamp, there is nothing but the roar of moving air and the sense of an abyss made of snow. Look at what the storm has done to the city's bones. Every hard edge has been rounded, every corner softened. Steps leading up to front doors are now gentle white ramps that rise halfway to the knobs. Iron boot scrapers have become small igloos. Hitching posts wear top hats of snow 2 feet high. The sharp, rectangular lines that men spent decades imposing on the island, the proud right angles of civilization, are being erased by curves and swells. The city is returning to something older than streets or property lines, a single, flowing, sculptural form, as though a giant hand has smoothed wet plaster. And the drifts themselves are alive. Watch closely. The surface of the snow is in constant motion, rippling like white silk when the wind strokes it. Long, serpentine streams of powder race across the broader drifts, hissing softly as they pour into doorways and areaways. A drift that stood only knee-high an hour ago now presses its smooth forehead against a shop window. Another has climbed the area steps of a brownstone and is licking at the basement windows like a slow, patient tide. Doors that opened easily at midnight are sealed by morning. Their occupants will have to tunnel outward like miners emerging from a collapsed shaft. Everything unnecessary is being buried. The city's clutter, broken crates, ash barrels, yesterday's headlines scattered by newsboys, has vanished beneath a cover so deep and clean, it feels almost sacred. What remains is shape and shadow and the immense, breathing quiet of a world forced to hold its breath.
Let that quiet settle over you now. Let the low, continuous voice of the wind become the only heartbeat you need. Let the knowledge that the streets are impassable, the telegraphs dead, the clocks irrelevant, carry you further downward into rest. Nothing is asked of you. Nothing is required. There is only the soft, steady, endless falling, millions of white stitches sewing the torn world back together, and the warm, safe dark that holds you while the storm finishes its ancient, necessary work. Drift. Deeper. The night is still long, and the blizzard has not yet said its final word. Descend with me now, down the narrow wooden stairs that smell of rye and yeast into the great brick-lined basement of a bakery on Orchard Street.
Under any other March night, the place would already be alive. The first bakers arriving by 4, the iron doors of the ovens yawning open, the air thick with the sweet, living scent of dough rising in wooden troughs the size of bathtubs. But this morning, the rhythm is shattered. At the top of the cellar stairs stands old Herr Klein, head baker for 31 years, his forearms mapped with pale flower scars that never quite wash away. He sets his shoulder against the stout street-level door and shoves. Nothing. He braces his feet, grunts, shoves again. The door flexes a fraction, then slams back as though a giant hand is leaning against it from the other side. A thin blade of snow hisses through the crack, glittering in the lamplight before it melts on the warm floorboards. Klein steps back, breathing hard, white dust rising from his apron. He understands. The drift outside has already climbed above the lintel. The city will wake without bread today. He retreats into the oven's leftover warmth.
The massive brick domes still breathe heat like sleeping animals. Sacks of flour line the walls in pale, ghostly rows. The bakery cats, 3 of them, all gray, have claimed the warmest bricks. They lie curled nose to tail, purring in their sleep, as though the world has not ended upstairs. Klein lowers himself onto a low stool, pulls his apron up over his hands like a shawl, and listens to the wind screaming down the chimney. It is a hollow, hollow sound, almost human. After a while his head nods. The storm sings him into a baker's doze, rocked by the smell of his own trade and the distant roar of a world gone white. Far above the rooftops, the telegraph wires had become crystal chandeliers of ice. What began as a thin glaze hours ago is now a solid sheath, some lines as thick as a man's wrist. They hang in shining, deadly loops between the poles, swaying with slow, ominous majesty whenever the wind gusts. Every few minutes another one gives up, a sharp whip-crack report lost in the gale, followed by a soft final thud as the severed end slaps a snowdrift.
In the Western Union office on Broadway, the brass sounders fall silent one by one. The night operator lifts his headphones, listens to the nothing inside them, and feels an odd lightness settle in his chest. No stock prices, no disaster bulletins, no frantic pleas from stranded trains. Only the soft tick of the regulator clock and the smell of coal oil from the stove. He pours coffee that steams like incense, wraps his hands around the cup, and for the first time in years experiences a Sabbath the boss has never granted him. Across the city, in long rows of stables behind livery companies and breweries, the horses wait in straw-scented dusk. A single lantern swings from a beam, painting slow golden arcs across restless flanks. The big Percherons and Clydesdales know something is wrong long before men do. Ears flick, hooves shuffle, warm breath rolls out in silver clouds. They smell the pressure dropping the way sailors smell a hurricane. A tall bay gelding, who pulls the park omnibus every day, lowers his head and blows a long, fluttering sigh that fogs the air like pipe smoke.
No grooms will come at 5 to curry them. No collars will be buckled, no traces snapped to whips. The great animals stand shoulder to shoulder, sharing heat, listening to the stable walls shudder each time the wind throws itself against the building. The lantern flame gutters, steadies, gutters again. Outside, the world they know has been canceled. 5 o'clock nears, though no clock can fight its way through storm to announce it. The temperature has fallen to 6 degrees above zero. The wind makes it feel 20 below. The snow is no longer snow as anyone remembers it. Wet, heavy, packable. It is diamond dust, needle fine, pouring sideways through every keyhole and shutter gap. In a cold water flat on the 4th floor of a tenement on Rivington Street, a young mother wakes to the sound of her own shivering. The sheet iron stove has eaten its last scoop of coal hours ago. She sits up in the dark and sees her breath hanging in the air like a ghost.
The room is a cavern of frost. Every nailhead in the plaster wears a tiny white cap. Every water pipe is furred with rime. She gathers the quilts higher over her 3 children, tucking frozen feet beneath layers of patched wool. Barefoot, teeth chattering, she pads to the window and scratches a peephole in the thick frost flowers. What she sees steals the breath she has left. The street no longer exists. In its place is a smooth, white gorge whose walls rise higher than the first-floor windows. The front steps of the building opposite have vanished entirely. Only the iron railing shows, bent under its load like a sapling in a flood. The gas lamp on the corner is a faint pink ember buried to its neck. Above, there is no sky, only a boiling, luminous gray that seems close enough to touch. Snow pours through the air in solid sheets, as though someone has torn open an enormous featherbed directly overhead. She stands frozen, in every sense, until the cold drives her back to the bed.
She slips beneath the covers and pulls her youngest against her chest, feeling the small heartbeat fluttering like a bird. There will be no trip to the match factory today, no school for the older ones, no wages, no milk, no coal delivery. The week's careful plans have been erased as completely as chalk under a wet rag. For a moment, fear flares bright, then subsides into something strangely like relief. The world has stopped turning, and for once, no one can blame her for stopping with it. She closes her eyes and listens to the wind singing its single, endless note against the building. The city is sealed. The day is canceled. There is nothing to do but breathe and hold each other and wait for whatever morning the storm decides to allow. He presses his small nose to the circle he has cleared in the frost, and the world he knows simply stops existing. For a moment, he cannot speak. His breath fogs the glass again, erasing the impossible view, so he wipes it clear with the sleeve of his nightshirt, faster this time, almost frantically. There is no street.
There is no opposite sidewalk, no railing, no lamppost, no hitching post, no ash barrels, no organ grinder who usually stations himself on the corner. There is only a smooth, blinding expanse that begins where the front steps ought to be and rises, rises, rises until it meets a sky the color of wet iron. The snow has climbed the entire height of the first-floor windows and is licking greedily at the second-floor sills. The gas lamp across the way is no longer a lamp. It is a faint orange heartbeat buried inside a white mountain. Everything is soft and curved and gigantic, like the surface of another planet. The boy's mouth forms a perfect, silent O. Behind him, the bedroom is still dark, still cold, but the strange, flat light pouring through his peephole turns the familiar walls an unearthly blue-white. The frost feathers on the window glow like spun glass. He can see his own reflection superimposed on the frozen chaos outside. Wide eyes, tousled hair, blanket slipping from one shoulder. And for an instant, he looks like a ghost staring out of a snow globe.
Downstairs, he hears the muffled thud of a door and his father's startled curse. Then his mother's sharper cry. Footsteps pound on the stairs. The boy does not move. He is transfixed by the beautiful, terrible emptiness where the world used to be. His father bursts in first, still in nightshirt and bare feet, beard wild from sleep. He lifts the boy off the chair without a word and takes his place. One look is enough. The man's face goes slack, with something between fear and wonder. "My God," he whispers, "it's eaten the street." From the hallway, his mother calls, voice trembling on the edge of laughter or tears. "Henry? Henry, the front door won't open. The snow's clear to the top of it." The boy twists in his father's arms to see better. He has never heard his parents sound small before. Outside, the wind keeps sculpting its silent masterpieces. Overhanging cornices now carry frozen eaves that curl downward like the lips of breaking waves, some of them 6, 8, 10 feet thick, hanging by the thinnest grip of ice.
In Union Square, the statue of George Washington sits blind and regal beneath a smooth white cape and a tall conical hat that makes him look like a snow king. Lafayette across the way has grown a long, drooping mustache of ice. The bronze lions outside the Astor Library wear ruffs thick as millstones. Every statue has been promoted to something mythic. At the harbors, the scene is grimmer. The East River and the Hudson are choked with gray slush and grinding ice cakes the size of boxcars. Ferries lie trapped at their slips, their paddles frozen mid-turn. The great ocean steamers anchored in the bay are top-heavy with ice. Their masts and yards sag like broken wings. Rigging has turned to glass rope. Deckhands who ventured out at first light now crawl on hands and knees, hacking at the weight before it rolls the ships. The waterfront cranes stand like skeletal giants, their booms bowed under glittering burdens. No whistle blows, no bell rings, no gangplank thuds. Trade, the lifeblood that pumps through New York's veins, has been gently, thoroughly strangled.
Back in the brownstone, the family clusters at the window. 3 silhouettes framed by frost flowers. The boy's breath comes in quick, excited puffs. The parents exchange a long look above his head. The father sets his son down and squares his shoulders, the way men do when they realize the day will demand something heroic just to reach the coal scuttle. But the boy is already tugging at his mother's sleeve. "Mama," he whispers, eyes shining. "Can we go out and play?" For one heartbeat, the absurdity of it hangs in the frigid air. Then the mother laughs, a short, incredulous sound that turns into something very close to sobbing, and pulls her son against her. Outside, the storm gives no sign of tiring. The strange, depthless gray light thickens rather than brightens. There is still no horizon, no sky, only the slow, relentless drift of white on white on white. The great blizzard of 1888 has only just begun its first full day. The boy's breath
keeps blooming and vanishing on the pane, blooming and vanishing, a small, faithful tide.
Each time the fog clears, he discovers the kingdom has grown even larger. The backyard apple tree, whose branches he climbed only last September, is now an enormous piece of coral dropped from the moon. The wooden swing his father hung for his birthday is nothing more than a gentle hump, as though the snow has swallowed it the way whales swallow boats in his picture books. He presses both palms against the glass now, leaving perfect starfish prints in the frost. Somewhere inside his chest, a bright, wordless song is rising. The world has been remade for him alone. Downstairs, the house wakes slowly, the way a bear wakes after winter. A match rasps, once, twice, then the soft pop of the gas burner catching. The kettle gives its first shy whistle before someone lowers the flame. The coal grate clinks as the night's ashes are shaken down into the pan. Every small domestic sound lands like a pebble in deep, still water, spreading rings of comfort through the cold rooms.
There is no clatter of milk wagons, no iron tires on cobblestone, no newsboy's hoarse cry of extra, only the wind, steady and huge, and beneath it the softer, endless hush of falling snow. Coffee begins its slow pilgrimage up the stairwell, dark, bitter, life-giving. It meets the faint lavender that still clings to the folded bedding and the honest bite of coal smoke seeping through the floorboards. The boy smells it all and feels the house gather itself around him like a quilt pulled to the chin. Out on the avenue, a neighbor, Mr. Callahan from 2 doors down, decides to be the first hero of the morning. He wrestles his front door open against a wind that wants to tear it from the hinges. The moment he steps over the threshold, the storm takes him to the waist. His shout of surprise is ripped away before it reaches his own ears. He flails, tries to lift one boot, sinks deeper. Snow pours into his coat collar, down his neck, into his mouth. For a moment, he looks like a man drowning in white water. Then something in him, laughter or simple wonder, breaks loose. He throws back his head and barks a single delighted laugh that the wind instantly swallows. He retreats, fighting the door shut behind him. Inside, his wife meets him with wide eyes and a towel. He stands dripping on the mat, cheeks crimson, beard laced with ice, shaking his head like a dog. "No, ma'am," he tells her, voice trembling between awe and mirth. "Not today. The street's gone to heaven or hell, and it hasn't decided which." 6 o'clock chimes from the parlor mantel. 6 slow bronze notes that seem to arrive from another lifetime. Yet the world outside remains locked in a bruised underwater twilight. There is no horizon, no gradient of rose or gold, only the same flat iron gray pressing down from every direction. The sun is a rumor the clouds refuse to repeat. On the elevated lines and the suburban railroads, trains sit frozen where night overtook them. Steam has long since bled away. The boilers tick as they cool. Inside the passenger cars, oil lamps burn low and blue. Men in bowler hats and women in bustles and furs sit shoulder to shoulder with strangers, sharing apples, flasks of whiskey, stories of other storms. Children sleep curled on seats, coats for pillows. Every window is a white circle. Snow has climbed until only a coin-sized hole of gray remains at the top. When someone clears it with a gloved hand, the view is always the same, an endless moving wall of white. They are sealed inside bright wooden eggs, drifting through a silent cosmos.
Back in the brownstone, the boy finally tears himself from the window. He patters barefoot down the hall, blanket trailing behind him like a coronation robe. "Mama! Papa!" His voice rings bright against the muffled house. "The world is gone, and it's beautiful!" His parents meet him on the landing, faces still soft with sleep and worry. The father lifts him high so the blanket billows. "It's still there, son," he says, though his eyes are not entirely sure. "Just wearing a thicker coat than usual." The boy wriggles free, runs to the top of the stairs, and cups his hands to shout down to the empty hallway below. "Then I want to go outside and wear it too." Somewhere far off, the wind laughs at the idea. A low, rolling, endless laugh that shakes the whole house gently in its cradle. The great white hurricane is only warming up, and childhood, for one small boy on a buried street in March 1888, has just become the most magical imprisonment in history. Somewhere on Broome Street, a loose shutter has found its voice. Clack, bang, clack, bang. It slaps against the shop front like a bored ghost trying to get in. Snow pours through the gap, swirling across a display of ladies' kid boots that no one will buy today. The boots stand in perfect rows, slowly filling with white, as though the storm has decided to try them on for itself. A neatly lettered sign, "Sale, 50 cents a pair," flutters once and is buried. Money has become theoretical. A single coal scuttle, a box of matches, a tin cup of warm milk, these are the new currencies of the realm.
Float with me now through the heavy oak door of a private library on Madison Avenue. The moment you cross the threshold, the storm shrinks to a roar. Thousands of books stand shoulder to shoulder like disciplined soldiers, their leather spines, Morocco red, calf brown, Russia green, glowing in the last embers of a beechwood fire. The air is perfectly still, dry and fragrant with old paper, candle wax, and the faint sweetness of aged glue. Even the wind cannot find entrance here. The thick turkey carpet and the double-layered drapes swallow sound the way the snow outside swallows footsteps. A single argand lamp burns low on the reading table, its green shade casting a pool of gold across an open volume of Longfellow. The pages do not stir. Dust drifts in slow, golden galaxies. Outside, the world is ending. In here, it is merely waiting between chapters. The drifts have begun their quiet conquest of the vertical city. On the narrower streets, the snow now kisses second-floor sills. In the cramped backyards of the Lower East Side, it has filled every courtyard to overflowing, erasing fences, clotheslines, and property deeds alike. From above, the blocks look like trays of raised dough, smooth and undifferentiated, ready for an unseen baker to score and slide into the oven. The old boundaries, mine, yours, ours, have been edited out by a patient white hand. Inside the houses, something strange and delicious is happening. The usual whip-crack of obligation has been silenced. No postman will come, no clerk will open a ledger, no foreman will dock wages for lateness. The day has been declared a holiday by a higher authority than any mayor or bishop. People move slowly from bed to stove to table, speaking in soft voices, rediscovering the simple animal pleasure of warmth, food, and one another's company. Children are allowed to stay in nightgowns until noon. Fathers who have not told a story in years suddenly remember they know several. Mothers pour an extra half-spoon of sugar into the coffee because, well, the world is ending, or beginning, and sugar matters again. You are in the very heart of this great pause, yet perfectly protected. Feel the weight of quilts across your legs, the gentle cradle of the pillow beneath your head. The cold is a play performed on the other side of the window for your private entertainment. Every moan of the wind in the chimney is a baritone aria composed entirely for you. The snow whispers against the clapboards, brushing the house the way a mother brushes hair from a sleeping child's forehead. Hush now. Nothing is required. Nothing is late. The clocks themselves seem to have agreed to tick more slowly. The gray light never changes. It is the color of old pewter, of dove wings, of dreams that refuse to decide whether they are night or day. It seeps through the frost flowers on the panes and paints the rooms in underwater tones. People light lamps at 10 in the morning without feeling the least bit foolish. The boundaries between breakfast and luncheon, between Monday and some other gentler time, dissolve like sugar in tea. Stay here. Let the wind sing its long, low song of the northern plains. Let the snow keep falling, soft and deliberate, covering every sharp edge of the world. Let the silence deepen until your own heartbeat is the loudest thing in the universe.
The storm has given the city the one thing money has never been able to buy: a perfect, enforced Sabbath. And you, wrapped in warmth and quiet, are free to drift inside it for as long as the blizzard chooses to stay. In a narrow kitchen on Charles Street, the kettle's song climbs the scale, bright and unafraid. Steam billows, fragrant with bergamot and orange peel. The woman, still in her wool wrapper, hair loosely braided, cradles the cup the way one cradles a small living thing. She stands at the window where the snow has pressed itself into a smooth, featureless wall only inches from the glass. Nothing moves out there except the occasional ripple when the wind strokes the drift. She drinks slowly, letting the heat travel down her arms, into her fingertips, into the hollow place behind her ribs. The storm is a roaring lion at the door, but here is tea, here is light, here is the soft ticking of the wall clock saying, "You are alive, you are warm, you are enough." All across the buried city, the same small rituals repeat like rosary beads. A grandfather in a nightcap turns pages of Dickens by the light of one candle, the flame trembling whenever the house shivers. A little girl on Bleecker Street pushes a wooden horse across a braided rug, inventing conversations between the horse and the shadows on the wall. A striped kitchen cat stretches luxuriously on the warm bricks before the stove, paws kneading the air, purring loud enough to drown the wind. Under a pine table, a spaniel curls into a perfect comma, nose tucked beneath tail, dreaming of open fields he cannot smell today. These are the hidden heartbeats, slow, steady, unhurried, keeping time beneath 30 inches of silence. Outside, the drifts have become architecture only winter is licensed to build. Graceful white vaults span the narrowest alleys, so smooth and perfect that children who see them tomorrow will believe giants sculpted them in the night. In Madison Square, the snow has piled into soft pyramids and frozen waves, turning the park into a range of Alps in miniature. The city looks carved from a single block of pale marble, every sharp human angle erased, every scar covered, every boast quieted.
The short, sunless day slips away almost unnoticed. There is no moment when anyone can say, "Now it is afternoon," or "Now it is evening." The pewter light simply thickens, deepens,
folds itself into velvet black. Clocks strike 5, 6, 7, but the numbers feel ceremonial, like bells rung underwater. The storm has abolished time along with everything else. Night returns heavier than any night before it. The snow, which spent the day climbing, now presses its full weight against the city. Basement windows have vanished entirely. Parlor windows are half smothered. In some narrower streets, the ground floor sashes are sealed beneath smooth white lids. The drifts lean against the brick like a tide that forgot to retreat. Inside, the glow from curtains and transoms looks warmer than ever. Small golden coins dropped into an ocean of dark. The wind gathers itself for one last measured breath. It softens, almost tenderly, then leans in again with its steady, tireless roar. Snow falls in long, straight columns for a while, then slants again, then straightens, an enormous pendulum counting heartbeats no one needs to count. Soft, cold, white, deep.
The great white hurricane has done its work. It has buried the clang of streetcars, the shriek of factory whistles, the endless hurried footsteps of a city that believed itself invincible. It has tucked every sharp edge under a quilt thick enough to muffle even ambition. And beneath that quilt, the city sleeps, truly sleeps, for the first time in memory. Not the shallow doze of exhaustion, but the deep, trusting sleep of a child who knows the storm is keeping watch. Let the darkness settle. Let the wind sing its low, final lullaby against the chimney. Let the snow keep falling, gentle now, deliberate, as if it is tucking the world in, corner by corner, dream by dream. You are warm. You are held. You are exactly where you are meant to be. Outside, the blizzard dreams on, vast and patient, covering the city with the softest, heaviest blanket it has ever known. And inside that blanket, everything, every worry, every plan, every tomorrow is allowed at last to rest.
The lamps are lit again, but they burn lower than usual. Wicks turned down to save oil, chimneys wiped clean with yesterday's newspaper. The yellow circles they cast no longer reach the corners of the rooms. Instead, they gather the family into smaller, more intimate islands of light. Chairs are pulled closer to the hearth. The grandmother's rocking chair inches forward until her knees almost touch the coals. Children who were sent to bed early are allowed to return in nightgowns and bare feet, drawn by the magnetism of shared warmth. Cards, dominoes, and checkers stay in their boxes tonight. There is only talk, soft and unhurried, and the occasional turning of a page when someone reads aloud from a single volume passed hand to hand. Listen to the house speaking its evening language. A beam in the parlor ceiling gives a dry, deliberate pop, like a knuckle cracking. The attic joists answer with a slower, deeper groan as the weight of snow settles another fraction of an inch. These are not sounds of breaking, they are sounds of holding.
Every creak is proof that the old brownstone is shouldering its burden and refusing to yield. The building breathes with its people, slow, patient, alive. Outside, the wind has laid down its whip and taken up a drum. The frantic tearing of the morning has become a low, steady thrum you feel in the sternum more than hear in the years. It is the sound a sleeping giant might make, vast, tidal, almost gentle. Thoughts that usually race like streetcars now roll forward on slow, heavy wheels, and finally, gratefully, stop. Up under the eaves, the storm is closest.
The slates overhead tick and whisper as dry snow scours them. Shh, shh, like a mother rocking a cradle just above your head. A child lying there can lift one hand and touch the ceiling, feel the cold radiating from the wood, and then pull that same hand back beneath a quilt that weighs a wonderful ton. The difference between inches of pine plank and absolute zero has never felt so sweet.
10 o'clock passes, then 11, marked only by the mantel clocks that no one thinks to wind. The snow has begun falling straight again, fat, deliberate flakes that take their time, as though the storm itself is weary and content merely to add one final layer of down before sleep. The fury is spent. What remains is benediction. Walk the buried streets in your imagination. The gas lamps, those faithful sentinels, are now no more than glowing lumps beneath the surface, their light seeping upward through a foot or two of crystal to create soft amber hollows in the drifts. Here and there, the iron crown of a lamppost still shows, crowned with a smooth white mitre, burning patiently for no one. A thin ribbon of warmth rises from each one, melting a delicate, breathing hole in the snow above it. Small chimneys for the underworld. Broadway, once a river of wheels and hooves, is now a long, winding gorge whose walls rise higher than a man's head. Fifth Avenue has become a frozen river valley, smooth and shining.
The elevated railway tracks are white ridges against the sky, their iron laced with ice thick as a child's wrist. Every sharp corner civilization ever built has been rounded, every straight line curved. The city looks like something remembered from a dream, clean, vast, and strangely kind. A lone brindle cur has found refuge in the hollow beneath a buried stoop. He circles twice, lies down, curls his tail over his nose, and closes his eyes without fear. Even the dogs understand. The storm has said wait, and waiting is wise. Inside the houses, the lamps burn lower still. One by one, they are carried upstairs, the flames shrinking to small golden teardrops. Footsteps on the stairs are slow, deliberate. No one is eager to leave the fire's orbit, yet no one resists the pull of bed. Quilts are heaped higher. Hot bricks wrapped in flannel are tucked at cold feet. Windows are checked one last time, not for escape, but for reassurance that the white wall is still there, still holding the world at bay. The great white hurricane exhales its final measured breath. The snow falls softer, softer, until it is almost tender. The city, every street, every soul, is tucked beneath the coverlet deeper than any grandmother ever made. And in that deep, deliberate quiet, the last lamp is turned down. Darkness folds over darkness. The storm, satisfied at last, begins to dream. Midnight slips past, unmarked by any clock that still feels like telling the truth. The last lamp is carried upstairs, the last door softly latched. Fires are banked with a careful shovel of ash, the coals buried like sleeping hearts that must be kept alive until morning. The rooms sink into a red-black hush, lit only by the faint, steady breathing of the embers. Then, sometime in the long, nameless stretch between 2 and 3, the hour when the living world is thinnest, the wind simply lets go. There is no dying sigh, no final rattle. One heartbeat, the air is roaring, the next, it is gone. The silence that floods in is so complete it feels like a presence, something vast and deliberate stepping into the room.
Shutters that have banged for 2 days fall still. Telegraph wires stop their metallic humming. Even the snow seems to pause mid-fall, surprised by the sudden absence of its partner. And then the flakes begin again, but transformed. They're large now,
lazy. Perfect hexagons the size of $50, drifting straight down through the motionless air. They land without a sound, each one a tiny, silent blessing. The city is being tucked in by the gentlest hand it has ever known. High above, the clouds, exhausted from their long labor, begin to part. A seam of clear, dark sky widens. Through it slides the moon, cold, ancient, and impossibly bright. It is a winter moon, thin and sharp as a blade of silver, and it pours its light over the buried city like water. Everything turns to crystal. The snow, 40 inches deep in the streets, 60 in the drifts, catches the moonlight and throws it back in a billion shattered pieces. The city glitters from horizon to horizon, a vast, hushed sea of diamond dust.
Long cobalt shadows stretch across the smooth white plains where avenues used to be. Rooftops are pale, glowing bars against the indigo sky. Trees, every twig sheathed in ice, stand like chandeliers abandoned by giants. The few telegraph wires still intact have become thick, luminous ropes of glass, humming faintly with captured starlight. Inside the dark houses, a few souls stir. A mother on Broome Street opens her eyes, unsure what has woken her. A night watchman on Fifth Avenue lifts his head from the kitchen table. They listen, holding their breath, waiting for the wind to slam the world again. It does not come. There is only the immense, listening silence and the soft, measured heartbeat of snow on snow. The realization arrives gently, like dawn itself. It is over. The siege is lifted. The great beast has lain down. They do not rise. They do not speak. They only exhale a long, trembling breath they did not know they were holding, and sink back into their pillows.
Sleep returns deeper than any they have ever known. The sleep of prisoners who discover the door was never locked. The sleep of children who learn the monster under the bed has curled up and gone to rest. Outside, the moon reigns alone over a city made new. Nothing moves. Nothing is asked. Everything, brick, iron, flesh, and ambition, is held in the same flawless silver hush. The great white hurricane has spent itself completely, and in its leaving it has given the strangest, most perfect gift a storm can give: a night of absolute, glittering peace. The night releases its last dark hour and almost shyly begins to thin. First the stars pale, then the indigo sky turns the color of a mourning dove's breast. Far beyond the rooftops of Brooklyn, a thread of rose appears, delicate as the vein in a marble statue. The thread widens, thickens, becomes a blade of molten copper. And then the sun, the honest, forgotten sun, rises at last. It comes up fierce and clean, a red gold coin flung by an angry god, and the city explodes into light.
For one heartbeat, everything is too bright to bear. The snow, 40, 50, 60 inches of it, has frozen overnight into a single, flawless mirror. The sun strikes it, and the mirror throws the light back 1,000-fold. Walls that have not seen direct sunlight in 3 days are suddenly bathed in white fire. Icicles 6 and 8 feet long blaze like chandeliers. Every drop of water trapped inside them splits the beam into red, violet, green, gold. Rainbows dance across brick, across frozen windows, across the stunned faces of those who have come to look.
Inside the brownstone on West 23rd Street, the father is the first to wake. The room is already bright, too bright for 5 in the morning. The ceiling glows as though the house has been turned upside down and the sky placed beneath it. He rises, bare feet recoiling from the icy floorboards, and lifts the shade. He actually staggers. The street is gone. In its place, a great white canyon rises to within 3 feet of the second-story sash.
The opposite houses are half buried, only their upper windows and roofs show above the drift, like ships floating on a frozen sea. The gas lamp on the corner is a small, brave torch burning beneath a smooth dome of snow. Everything glitters so fiercely that the eyes water. He turns, voice hushed with reverence. "Children, Mary, come see." They gather in robes and blankets, hair wild, eyes still puffy with sleep. The little girl climbs into his arms and stares, round-eyed. "Daddy," she whispers, "did the clouds fall down?" "No, darling," he answers, throat thick. "The sky just decided to visit us for a while." Across the narrow canyon, a window flies up. A man in shirt sleeves leans out, beard rimmed with frost, grinning like a boy. "Hello, the house!" he bellows, voice carrying for blocks in the crystalline air. "Still alive over there?" "Alive and kicking," the father shouts back. A woman's laugh rings out from another window, clear, delighted, almost drunken with relief. Then another voice, and another. Windows open all along the buried street. Heads poke out, scarves and nightcaps wave like flags of truce. Someone begins to sing Sweet Molly Malone, and half the block joins in, off-key and joyous. Laughter bounces between the snow walls, bright as the icicles. The great silence is broken, not by machinery or commerce, but by human voices discovering one another again. The children are already begging to go out, to tunnel, to build, to touch the miracle. The father looks at the smooth white cliff that used to be his front steps and laughs. A big, helpless, happy sound. "First," he says, setting his daughter down, "we find the shovels. Then we dig ourselves a new world." Outside, the sun climbs higher, striking fire from every drift, every icicle, every breath that rises in the cold. The city, half buried, exhausted, stunned with beauty, begins to stir. The great white hurricane has ended, and in its wake it has left a morning so bright, so clean, so alive with possibility, that even the oldest New Yorker feels something like Christmas in his heart.
The world was never gone. It was only waiting, sparkling beneath the snow. The first door to open is on Perry Street. It groans, resists, then suddenly gives way with a soft explosion of snow. A man in a wool cap and his father's old army greatcoat steps out onto the crust. For one astonished second, he stands on top of the world like a polar explorer. Then the crust cracks with a sound like breaking sugar, and he drops to his knees in snow up to his hips. He laughs, a short, incredulous bark, and begins to dig. Crunch, lift, toss. Crunch, lift, toss. Each shovelful flies sparkling into the sun like a burst of diamonds. Within minutes, another door opens, then a second-story window. A boy in knickerbockers wriggles out feet first, slides down a drift on his stomach and lands laughing beside the first man. More shovels appear. More men. More boys. They pour from houses like ants from a kicked mound. Bankers in fur collars dig beside Irish laborers in patched jackets. A judge and a lamplighter take turns with the same shovel. Snow flies in glittering arcs. Tunnels begin to form, long arched corridors with smooth white walls taller than a man's head. Staircases are carved down to buried sidewalks, steps chopped with the blunt end of axes. The city is turning itself into a honeycomb of bright trenches. The mood is half work, half carnival. A red-faced man leans on his shovel and calls to a stranger across the canyon. "Say, neighbor, you still got a wife or did the drift carry her off?" "She's inside making coffee strong enough to float a horseshoe, if we ever find the street." Laughter bounces along the white walls, bright as the bells that suddenly appear around the corner. A sleigh. Someone found a real sleigh in a livery stable. Comes high-stepping down the middle of what used to be Hudson Street. The horse is a big bay with frost on his whiskers and antique bells on his harness. Jingle, jingle, jing, bright as shattering ice. Children run alongside, shrieking with delight. Men stop digging to cheer. The driver stands like a stagecoach hero out of Currier and Ives, waving a gloved hand. For one perfect moment, the 19th century looks exactly the way it always wanted to be remembered. The sun keeps climbing. The thinnest top crust of snow begins to soften, releasing that unmistakable scent. Cold water and sunlight on clean linen. From every chimney that has managed to find its voice again, wood smoke rises in straight, unwavering columns. Kitchen windows glow gold. Coffee, bacon, baking bread. The smells drift along the tunnels and mingle with the sharp, mineral breath of the snow itself. The city smells like breakfast and survival and childhood Christmas all at once. Pigeons launch from under eaves, shaking off ice that flashes like broken glass. They circle the blinding white roofs, dark commas against the impossible blue, then settle again in cautious flocks, leaving delicate, three-toed calligraphy across the drifts. In Central Park and every vacant lot from 5 Points to Yorkville, children own the morning. They tunnel like badgers, carve thrones taller than their fathers, lie on their backs and make snow angels the size of omnibuses. Their voices ring against the hard crust, pure, piercing, unstoppable. A boy on a drift the height of a 2-story house shouts down to his friends below, arms spread wide, "I'm the king of the world!" And for today, no one argues. The great white hurricane is over, and the city, sore, stunned, half-buried, and utterly alive, has been reborn into the brightest morning any of them will ever remember. The great engines remain silent. No whistle splits the air, no elevated train rumbles overhead, no ticker tape chatters its frantic gossip. The factories stand like sleeping titans under their white cowls. The stock exchange is a sealed tomb of snow and silence. And in that absence, a softer heartbeat takes over. The slow pulse of people, tending fires, sharing soup, telling stories by lamplight. The city has been returned to the scale of the human hand and the human voice. Imagine walking the new geography.
Your boots break through the thin afternoon crust. Squeak crunch, squeak crunch. A sound as satisfying as biting into fresh bread. The sun, low and honey gold, strikes the snow at a slant, turning every drift into a glowing ember. The air is so clear it feels sharpened. Each breath is a small, bright miracle. The light bounces upward from below as much as it pours down from above, so you walk inside a sphere of radiance. For the first time in years, no one is hurrying you. There is nowhere you must be. The storm has erased every appointment, every debt, every scolding clock. You are simply, perfectly, here. As the sun sinks, the temperature begins its slow, courteous drop, and the digging hands slow their rhythm. Tunnels are finished. Paths wind like bright rivers between the houses. Shovels are leaned against door frames like rifles after battle. Men and boys tramp indoors, cheeks scarlet, hair rimed with frost, eyes shining with honest fatigue. Mothers meet them with towels and coffee and the quiet pride that comes from having kept a family safe for 3 whole days.
Twilight settles gently, the color of lilac wine. The sky moves through every shade of violet until the first star ignites, cold, steady, ancient. One by one, the gas lamps are lit again. Their flames burn cleaner than ever in the washed air, throwing long indigo shadows across the snow that look like spilled ink. Windows glow amber, each one a small hearth fire promising the same thing: you made it through. The city curls into itself for one more night, but this time without fear. The snow is no longer a foe, it is a thick, faithful quilt pulled to the chin of every street and rooftop. The silence is no longer watchful, it is content. Somewhere a church bell rings the hour, clear as a dropped crystal goblet, and no one flinches. You are warm. The kettle is singing again. The blankets are heavy and smell faintly of cedar and wood smoke. Outside, the white city sparkles under a sky rinsed clean of every impurity. Let the memories settle over you like the snow itself, soft, weightless, complete. No sound but your own slow breath.
No urgency but the gentle pull of sleep. The storm has done its work. It came, it roared, it buried the world, and then it left behind this gift, one perfect, quiet night in which nothing at all is required of you. Drift into the white. Drift into the silence. Drift into the deep, starlit peace. Sleep. Sleep. Sleep.